Hello, race fans, and welcome to Rattling the Rollcage. I'm your host, Randy Pettitt. Some call racing's greatest showman, and I'm here today with a very special friend and a man that, combined with him and me, we represent not one decade, not two, but 3 decades of the voices that you hear at the historic Madhouse, Bowman Gray Stadium in our hometown of Winston-Salem. Tim McGuire. Tim, welcome to Rattling the Rollcage.
It's good to be here, Randy. This is anytime you can talk about stadium racing, it's great. You could talk about it all day. All the things that happen at the famed quarter mile, all the things, the racing things, those are great. But the things that happen in the sideshow are just
exactly
the drama.
Now, Tim and I have crossed paths a few times during our tenures at Bowman Gray Stadium, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But Tim, you do come back to the Madhouse from time to time as a fan, and I know when I left the first time, it took me actually several years before I could come back and sit in the stands, because I guess it's, when you're out there in the spotlight and you're the ringmaster in the middle of everything, it's kind of tough to go from being, the leader of the band to sitting in the audience and listening to the band. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I don't know about you, but I don't know when you started going to the stadium. I know you went there as a fan, and I went there as a small kid, and going with my dad, my mom and dad, and we would go, and that's, I was still a fan when I left. I was a fan when I was there. I was a fan before, and I'm still a fan of it. I enjoy going. I don't go every week, but still seeing all the folks, they walk up to you and speak, how you doing, blah, 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 and they'll say, you need to be back over here, and one of them say, boy, I bet you're glad you're not back over here anymore. You'll get
you hear a little bit of everything.
You hear a little bit of everything, but one of the neatest things about the stadium is people sitting in the same seat every year.
It's kind of like church, if you go to the same church for a long time, and our producer here is an ex-minister, and Tim's very active in his church, and you'll get folks that sit in the same row, the same pew, or the same seat every week, and man, Bowman Gray is no different.
Well, I always say something reaches iconic status when people mention it in obituaries. And people do. When someone passes away, he was a big, or she was a big Bowman Gray Stadium race fan. You give that some thought. I mean, that's your whole life story. A very, very short little column there, and their family felt the need to put that in there. So that's very, very, very neat that something's lasted that long and someone enjoyed it that much that they put it in their obituary when they pass.
Well, I wanted you and I both to share our story of how we got into sports announcing today, because I know there's going to be somebody watching this YouTube video that maybe they're younger, maybe even they're older or middle-aged, and they're interested in getting behind a microphone and talking about sports and maybe even making some money for doing it. So I wanted you to go first. What's your very first memory as a kid, when you started paying attention to sports announcers? Who was your favorite, and what path did you take to put that into action?
Well, I listened to the Atlanta Braves broadcast.
Same.
When I was 7, 6, 7, 8, 9 on a little transistor radio. We only had 3 channels.
Right.
Not counting the educational channel, which I probably should have watched. But those guys like Milo Hamilton and Ernie Johnson, Skip Carey, the baseball part of it. But then racing, we would go to races. But that's how we didn't have televised racing, so we listened to MRN, Universal, Bob Montgomery, Ken Squire, Mike Joy. He's probably my favorite of all time as far as racing.
Mike's a local guy, unless he's moved. He's out in Clemens, North Carolina, and we've ran across Mike many times. And anyway,
I couldn't. The first time I met Ken Squire was at Daytona. I could not speak. I was so much in. I hate to say this with another person, but in awe, because he is the word master. And I told him, I said, I steal a lot of your phrases. I'm sorry, but I do. He says, well, I'm still waiting on the royalty checks. So,
good answer.
But it, it took a lot of courage, and I was in my 40s, no 30s, late 30s. It took a lot of courage to go walk up to him for me, because I said, man, there's Ken Squire, gosh, And I've seen Mike Joy at Costco, and it's like, there's Mike Joy, and I see him in the stands when his son ran Bandoleros and then Legends cars. When we had that night at the stadium, he would come over there. and I still follow him on Twitter. And he comes back, if he's talking about some kind of car he's looking at or whatever, and it's something I'm interested in, he actually comes back and talks to you, which is pretty neat. I'm not in Mike Joy's, league at all, but I started, doing local junior high, little league football, things like that.
What schools?
North Davidson, and then we had the little league here in Davidson County.
Okay.
Every community
And
had
by the
a
way,
team.
we're filming this today in Midway, North Carolina. That's midway between Winston-Salem and Lexington, and we're right off exit 100 on US 52. We're on Hickory Tree Road, and we're at the Turn and Burn Raceway. And it's kind of a slot car facility. They got 2 great big slot car tracks here. They got a beautiful RC track. They got all the model cars, if you're in that kind of thing. They got all the bodies and engines and parts for these things. So if you haven't had a chance to come check this place out, it's really cool. Didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, that's fine.
And you're a local guy. You're from this area, so you're very
I
familiar
grew up
with it.
about a little bit over a mile from here. My mom and dad still live here.
That's awesome.
So they've lived here since 1963.
So
you
were
old.
saying you started doing some JV and high school stuff, and that's kind of how you got into
That's
sports.
how I got started. I went to college and did a little bit in that. I've always been interested in it. Never brave enough to really go make a living at it.
Right.
I worked at UPS for 37 years, so I had a backup.
Right.
Don't
quit your day job, as they say, right?
And when you've got you're not really doing it for the money. You're doing it for experience. And that's the local things are like that. You'll get something, but it's really probably doesn't amount to what you probably deserve or the amount of time you put into it.
Right.
It takes a lot of preparation just to do, a Saturday night at Bowman Gray, and 80% of the stuff that you put together you don't even use.
Right. You have it just in case.
You have it just in case, and then the next week's the same way. And if you have a tour race coming in, that's more preparation, because you don't see those guys run every week. You don't know who they are. You know of them, and you've read about them, but you don't know them, and you want to try to throw something personal in there about their lives for people get interested.
It is more of a challenge, certainly, with tour
But
series.
as far as just walking in and picking up the microphone and talking, there's more to it than that.
Absolutely. I wanted to set the stage when you came to Bowman Gray, and to do that, we're going to have to talk about when I came to Bowman Gray, and I'll try to run through mine pretty quick. When I was a little kid, they tell me that I came to Bowman Gray Stadium in my mother's arms. So I was there literally first 6 months I was born.
Right.
I had 2 uncles that raced over there. One of them raced in NASCAR's what used to be called the Grand American Series,
right,
which is sort of like the K&N Series now, I guess. Ernie Shaw. Ernie was a Southside legend. He owned Ernie's Restaurant over on Walltown Street, a big hangout for all the racers and crews and officials and fans on Saturday nights for probably over 20 years.
A long time.
And I grew up in that restaurant, and Ernie quit driving, but he stayed in and around the sport. And then his younger brother, Richard Shaw, Richard's still living. Ernie and Butch, the other 2 brothers, have passed on. But Richard raced in the old blunderbuss division at Bowman Gray. And for those of you going, what in the world is blunderbuss? That's a German word, I think, meaning something like land yacht. But they raced the early 70s models, Cadillacs, Chrysler Imperials, and these great big giant honking cars. They were tanks. And I'm going to tell you what, I think you saw them too, Tim. Those things put on a show, man.
Yeah.
And you had to be a man's man to drive one of those things.
I kind of hate when that series ended.
Yeah, me too.
But
they started running out of cars. They
there's
literally
no
couldn't
cars.
find them anymore.
They couldn't find them.
And guys were spending, $5,000 for an engine for those things. It just got out of hand. But I was just saying that because that's how I got interested in Bowman Gray. My mother would take me. I had 2 uncles that raced. I had an older brother. I lost my brother a few years ago, but my brother would take me over there sometimes. When I got old enough, I had a paper route in and around the Bowman Gray area. I had a paper route over there. I mowed yards. I'd make enough money where I could afford to, pay my own way to go to the races. And I literally grew up at Bowman Gray Stadium. And when I was a kid, one of my heroes was Charlie Harville.
Oh, yeah.
And I love Charlie because I saw Charlie on television. He was on Channel 2 and Channel 8 in my hometown. And then Charlie also announced professional NASCAR racing and professional wrestling. Those were 2 of my favorite things as a little kid growing up. So Charlie Harville was one of my favorites. Gene Overby, the voice of the Wake Forest Demon Deacs. And both of those guys, when I got a little older and started getting behind the mic, I had an opportunity to meet them, talk to them, and they were able to kind of critique my work and guide me and help me. And You know, and that's part of why I wanted to do these shows, kind of give back a little. If there's somebody out there watching this and they're wondering, how can I get into this? Just, you listen to me and Tim, and we're going to coach you on how to do it.
Hey, you'll have to be able to understand you're going to have to sacrifice some time.
Exactly.
Away from the racetrack.
Exactly.
To get prepared and just be willing to do about anything, really.
Well, speaking of doing anything, okay, so I had people in my family that love racing. They took me when I was a kid. I got old enough I'd go myself. But along the way, I've got a second, I think it's a second or third cousin of mine. His name is Kip Childress.
Yeah.
And Kip has worked for NASCAR for a long time. You've seen pictures of Kip on Facebook. He drives a pace car a lot of times. You'll see him doing the selfies with the field in the back glass. It's really cool. Kip's dad, Lance Childress, was in the Tiny Greyhounds football organization. And I later had nephews play there, but when I was younger, I got invited to come along over there, and for whatever reason, a grown-up didn't show up one Saturday, and Lance Childress, bless his heart, he's the one to blame. He put me behind a microphone over to Tiny Greyhounds field, and I announced the first game, and I thought I was finished.
Yeah.
And then I heard my name come over the PA, and I went to the concession stand. I thought I was in trouble. Maybe I'd said something wrong. And Lance grabbed me by the collar and he said, "Look, boy, I don't know what you did, but get back up there and do it again. These people want to hear you again." And man,
Yeah.
you're talking about music to a little kid's ears. I went back up there and did another game or two. And the next thing you know, I was over here at the Greyhounds field every Saturday, and I was announcing football games from 9 o'clock in the morning to 9 at night.
Right.
And then the JV football coach for Parkland High School and Reynolds High School were over there scouting, and the Reynolds coach approached me, and their athletic director eventually called me and asked me if I wanted to do their JV games over at the same complex. Those were on Thursday nights. So I went from having Saturday games, and then I added Reynolds football, and then eventually Parkland football on Thursday nights.
Right.
And that led to an opportunity to announce at Bowman Gray Stadium. They had the Sertoma Bowl, which was a youth football bowl for all the different teams that had won their division or championship. And man, that was like Super Bowl to me. I was a young guy when I got to do it, and that was my first time behind the mic at Bowman Gray, and it was pretty awesome.
Well, there's a guy that you and I both know, both really just, I admired him, and I know you do
Yes.
too, Hank Schoolfield.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, you could sit, I would read about something, you know, about some kind of history of the sport.
Right.
And I would go and ask him about it. And he'd say, "Well, I was there that night." And I'd just sit there like enthralled.
Exactly.
I didn't want it to end.
He was a walking encyclopedia of stock cars.
and I remember you worked for him also.
I did. I worked for Hank Schoolfield for 7 years, and that's part of what led to me becoming the voice of Bowman Gray. When I first started at Bowman Gray, I was a real young guy. I was in my late teens, I believe, and I would answer the phone. And people, especially if the weather was threatening, this was before everybody had a phone and radar on their phone. They would call a racetrack. I mean, just dozens of calls, one after the other. "You guys racing tonight?" And of course, I don't care if it was misting rain. "Oh yeah, we're racing tonight. Come on down." You know, we were trained until they called it. You told them to come on.
Oh yeah.
And so if you drove all the way to Bowman Gray from Mount Airy or Statesville back in the day, I'm really sorry, but I was just doing what I was told to do. Okay. But I answered the phone, and I also helped keep up with the points. And
Right.
Don Wilson did that for many years, and that duty was kind of transitioned to me, so Don could do some other things and have a Saturday night off with his family. And man, I took it real seriously because I know those guys spent a lot of money to come over there and race, and I did everything I could to make sure it was done right. But that's how I got started with Bowman Gray. And there was an announcer that for whatever reason, he had a lot of other activities going on, and he eventually just got to where he could not do all the races. I had a chance to sub for him one night, and I won't go into all the details, but eventually in 1989, I was the youngest announcer in the history of the Madhouse, and I was, I think, 20. I was a young guy. I was a really young guy. And they were scared to death of what I was going to say, and they probably still are. So, Tim, that's how I got started, and I announced the races at Bowman Gray from 1989 to 1994. And I left in 94. My thinking was I'd been talking to some folks about running a car, driving a car.
I remember
in
that.
the NASCAR Goodies Dash Series.
Right.
I had an opportunity to go drive in that series
Right.
because I'd gotten in a race car and played a little bit, and I was fast enough where I thought, you know, I could do this. It just takes the money. And I had about 45–50% of the money lined up, but I never could get the rest of the money to pull the trigger on it. So I rolled the dice, left my baby at Bowman Gray, and it didn't work out for me to go race.
Right.
But it did open the door for Mr. Tim McGuire here, and he set a standard for excellence. And man, you went what 16, 17 years straight. And
I missed one night.
And he missed one night, folks. Now that's dedication. And listen, you can't call in sick at Bowman Gray, man, because there really is, back when you and I were doing it by ourselves, there was no understudy. You were it.
Yeah.
It's just like being the ringmaster at the circus, man. You were
Up and
on
down,
every
up and down
Saturday
those
night.
steps, 7, 8 times.
So that's what opened the door for you to come to Bowman Gray. So that's kind of how we got to that point in 1995. I remember I came to the first 2 or 3 races with you and kind of made sure you got the hang of it. Listen, this guy was a natural. He got the hang of it really quick, and I was out, and I was able to go and spend some time with my family and try to pursue the racing thing. But what do you remember about that first night you were there at Bowman Gray, and you're following in the footsteps of this crazy guy right here who had already got things all stirred up?
Well, the first thing, and I forgot to ask you, do you like plug that in before you wear it, or is it 110 or 220?
I've got the cord running out the back here, and it's in the socket right over there.
Well, that's one of the differences between you and I. I don't wear the flashy suits, which that's fine. We're different people, and that's great.
Tim, I had a fan, I think, hit it right on the head one time. They said, you know, everybody loves homemade ice cream.
Yeah.
And Tim McGuire is like, and they meant it. They didn't mean it ugly. Tim McGuire is like your best homemade French vanilla ice cream.
Yeah.
And Randy Pettitt is like, it was like homemade Rocky Road or sherbet. You know,
A little bit more variety.
We're just different, man.
Yeah.
We're just different.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. And you know, I've had some people over the years think, for whatever reason, I didn't like you, and that's far from the truth. Tim and I have we've been friends on Facebook, and we've crossed paths here and there, and we're just different, you know, and that's okay. It'd be boring if everybody did the same thing.
If everybody, you know, was the same, it would be a boring world.
You had some little catchphrases and things you did I really liked, and I didn't try to steal them because I knew it'd be too obvious if I did. But anyway, your first night at Bowman Gray, what do you remember the first time you had to go out there on that microphone on the track?
That's the hard delay.
Part. That's the hard. Talk about that.
That delay.
What do you mean when you say delay? Tell the folks what you mean by that.
You say something in the mic. You say something, and then about 2 seconds later, it comes back and smacks you in the face.
Exactly.
And you just have to really focus on what you're saying.
And drown out the echo.
And drown out the echo. And I would always tell, especially guests, sponsors, folks that wanted to speak to the crowd, I just look at me, don't listen, you know. And I had a lady come out there one time, and I said, now just look at me, pay attention. I'm not going to tell you who it was, but I said, just look at me, and just block everything out and just speak the way you normally would. And she says, hello, and then it comes back, hello. And then she says, this is weird. And it comes back, this is weird. Yeah. And then she hands me the mic back. So, and unfortunately.
I got a good story too. Don Flo, everybody knows if they're in the triad, they know Don Flo. He is the CEO of Flo Automotive Companies. And I worked for Don for on and off for about 13 years or so. And I met Don at Bowman Gray. First time I ever met him. And he got on the microphone. And Don Flo is a terrific speaker, very smart man, very polished. But he got on that microphone, and that delay was really kicking his tail. So I remember for a second almost covering his ears with my hands and getting him going. And once he got going, he did great. But that's not the first time that's happened for sure.
Oh yeah, the first night, I was really nervous. I will tell you that. But I'd been, like you said, announcing, football, basketball, all baseball.
You did some hockey too, didn't you?
I did hockey 1 year.
What hockey?
The Thunderbirds.
Thunderbirds. Okay. So you were the voice of Thunderbirds.
The first. I guess it's the incarnation of that now.
Gotcha.
But
whatever it was called
when they first came to town, they were the Thunderbirds.
Right.
You had the Polar Twins were first, and then they folded, and then the Thunderbirds came, and I did. Now, if you want to smell like beer when you leave a place, that's the place, because I sat right between the two penalty boxes.
Wow.
And
little beer being
in minor
sloshed
league
around.
hockey, if you don't have a fight, it's not minor league hockey. And when they would...
Are you talking about in the stands or out on the ice?
Well, on the ice. Because
Okay.
that's part of the draw. Excuse me, that's part of the draw. But when something like that would happen, it's automatic. Beer was flying on the visitor, the visiting player that had been in the fight with the hometown hero there. So it was automatic. You had beer all over you. You always hoped there wouldn't be any fights. And of course, again, you were announcing minor league hockey. If you've ever seen Slapshot, the movie,
right,
that is minor league hockey.
I've been to some games and I enjoy them. It's great entertainment.
Oh, it's
and the fans, you know, the team here in town, I think they do a good job of promoting it.
A great job.
They really do, and they have good crowds, and they've got promotions and things going on, and it is very entertaining.
But as far as
you know, there are probably some things that hockey got you ready for Bowman Gray, right?
But comparing minor league hockey to the National Hockey League, that's two different animals.
Right.
And it's kind of like comparing, you know, cup racing to Bowman Gray. You know, all the guys work, you know, they're working another job. They come home and work on those cars every night, getting ready. It's every week. I always treat it like I've said this before. Every week was those guys Daytona 500.
And that's a good way of looking at it. And that's one thing I wanted to clear up in this video. You know, Tim and I, obviously, we're very different. Our styles are different. But if we don't have anything but one thing in common, the one thing we both have in common is we both love Bowman Gray Stadium racing, and we understand, we get the passion for it that the fans have, that the teams have, and a lot of the sponsors too. We understood that, and I think that was part of what made me and you able to do that job for so long.
You know, one of the things,
and I'm still doing it, by the way. It's not don't mean it to sound like I'm quitting. So.
One of the neat things, the sponsors, usually when you do what you want to do and when you sponsor something, if you're a company, you reach your, you know, return on the investment, the ROI, and then you leave.
Right.
The stadium's not like that. Sponsors stay for, I mean, you could go through a program when I started back in I did the last
95,
96,
95,
anyway.
mid-90s.
But anyway,
Yeah.
you could take a program and you could pull it out, and you'd probably have 80% of the same sponsors. You know, there's some that leave, like anything else. But mainly, that's one of the neat things about it. They understand what that track and the racing means to the community.
Right.
And they know every Saturday night it's going to be packed. And those folks are loyal. The fans are loyal to the sponsors.
The most loyal fans anywhere in the country.
I mean, the money you spend as a you know, when you advertise there, it comes back to you in droves. I mean,
I agree. Tim, I got so many questions to ask you, but the one that really comes to mind is you were there a long, long time, and I'm going to go back and find a program from 95, 96 just to make sure I don't have the timeline wrong. But
I think it was 96.
Okay,
but it's okay.
And you may be right, but we've both been over there a long time. I know between the two of us, we got at least 30 seasons together over there, and there's nobody. Lewis Compton, the mouth of the South, Lewis.
I don't know if he.
I don't know how long Lewis was there, but he was there quite some time.
I don't know if he was there 17. Bob Montgomery.
And I'm trying to catch Lewis being the most colorful guy there. Lewis, a lot of the older drivers will tell me that Lewis liked to sing.
Yeah.
And you heard it here first. I'm going to break out the singing one night. I'm going to catch him off guard.
Well, I sung the national anthem the last week. I did the last week of the year one time. I just decided I was going to do it.
Cool.
And
did you tell him, or did you just go do it?
Well, I sung it. I sung it, and then I got down there and I said, I'm going to do this. I do sing.
So
a
you
little
just started
bit.
singing it, and I guess
I said, join me. What I wanted to do, I'd seen in Canada, if you've ever seen a hockey game there or a CFL game, especially hockey, the guy singing the anthem, he'll start out singing it, and then he just turns it over to the crowd.
Right.
And that was my intention.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
I've tried that too. It didn't work
out. But I kept singing.
Right.
And it worked out. No one called and said that, you know, get him out.
We're never coming back again.
You know, but you know, it's again the delay. A little bit, but like I said, I decided I wanted to do it.
That's
and
cool.
I did it upstairs. I did it down on the floor.
And that's the hardest place to sing.
You
by
can.
the way.
I mean,
it's easy to do it upstairs.
Anybody can do it upstairs in the mic.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to do it.
Right.
When I was.
And listen, by the way, if you're watching this video and you want to sing the national anthem at Bowman Gray Stadium, I'm not in charge of that. Tim's not in charge of that. You need to reach out to the Bowman Gray Stadium Public Relations Department. That is Lauren Penniless, and you can find Lauren's number and information in any Bowman Gray Stadium program in the last 5 or 6 years. Okay,
but
let's get that out of the way. I have no control over that because people ask me that all the time. I'm sure you got it too.
Well, they let me get people.
Okay, well, cool. I stay out of it.
They let me do it because I wanted the people to come and sing it before they actually sung it.
Right. Oh yeah.
I wanted to practice, before we got started, before practice started.
And it's hard, folks. It's really hard to do.
It's really hard to do. And I've had people, Nashville recording artists stumble.
You saw literally thousands of races over 16, 17 years.
Yeah.
Are there a couple maybe that stand out where you'll never forget it?
I'll never forget the night that Puddin' Swisher decided that he wasn't in the right spot, that they didn't have him lined up right for a restart.
And we're talking about Melvin Puddin' Swisher, Kernersville. He drove the number 53 modified at the Madhouse for years and years.
Well, he decided he was upset where they put him on the restart, and this is just a 25 lapper, not a long, not a 199, not a 100, not a 25 lapper. So he's upset about where they put him. So they're coming around. They're going to get the green. Pace car pulls into the infield. Field comes around. Everybody takes off but Puddin'. Puddin' parks completely, and I'm sure you remember this. I think you were there too.
I was the flagman that night. I know where this story's going.
And he parked parallel at the start-finish line. And you talk about bedlam in the press box, where the race director's calling the race, telling the flagman
and
what
I believe
to do.
that was maybe Greg Garrison at the time.
And it just turned it. I mean, they're coming around, and you know how quick a modified goes around that quarter-mile racetrack. And they're coming around, and he's parked it, and he's got out of the car already, and putting a great guy.
And he came up to the flag stand and yanks my headset radio off my head, flagging and trying to get on and talk to the race director using my headset. I just threw my hands up. Like, what am I going to do with this guy?
You threw your hands up in the air. They got him loaded down. Everybody's yelling, Slon, throw the yellow. Well, then he leaves you. He comes up into the stands and comes to the press box. He comes in to where I'm at. He said, "You got to do something." I said, "I just announced." So then he goes to Gray, I think, and then Kelly comes up there raising a ruckus.
That's his daughter.
That's his daughter. I'm sorry, I didn't identify.
It's okay.
Her. But
and they're great people. He was just mad.
They calmed down though. They got calmed down. They gave him a drink and they talked about they gave him a Coke. Talked about it. He was back the next week. Everything was cool.
But while he was talking about it, they were hooking his car up to a record.
Oh yeah, that was the next thing.
Let's put that in the story.
Oh yeah, that was coming while he was up there, pleading his case.
Your first modified champion that you remember was in '96, and that would be Tim Brown. What do you remember about that modified championship?
Well, on championship Saturday night, it started raining about 20 minutes till 7.
Now you guys had already been rained out before that, right?
Yeah.
It
started raining. Well, about 5 minutes till 7, it was called.
So they decided the event not postponed but canceled. That was it.
That's it, because Winston-Salem State started football the next week, so that was the end of it.
Yeah,
so
for the fans watching us that aren't familiar with Bowman Gray, it's literally a quarter-mile flat racetrack in a football arena with the football field in the middle of the racetrack. And they actually play Division II. Winston-Salem State University plays their football games there in normal times.
Well, Wake Forest, when they moved to Winston-Salem, Reynolds bought a college.
And the whole stadium was built to play football. Yeah. We could do a whole video on that.
Yeah, it's.
But getting back to that night, Tim Brown wins the championship, and they called the race at, you said 5 to 7. And
then about 15 after 7, the sun came out.
Oh man!
And started drying up. But once you call it, it's over.
Now, Tim, I wanted to say something before you finish your story. I used to be one of the most critical people about making that call.
That's a hard call.
It is. And listen, I have much more respect now for the folks making that call, whether it's the folks that run the stadium or Ace Speedway or other tracks that I might be at, because I've been in their shoes a few times in the last 3 or 4 years. It was either my call or I was helping make the call. And I'm going to tell you what, it's really hard because you cannot win. If you decide to wait it out and it continues to rain, you keep everybody there another 2 or 3 hours, they get mad. People drive there from Mount Airy, Statesville, Lexington, wherever, drive there. Some people drive 2 or 3 hours to come watch Bowman Gray racing or more. And then if you call it like that and the sun comes out, you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't.
And especially back before everybody had weather radar on their phones.
Right.
Where they could sit out in the parking lot and wait and see what you were going to do.
Right.
I mean, now.
And that's what they do now.
That's what they do now. And
they won't even open the gate now, a lot of times, which is smart.
Which is smart because then you have to deal with rain checks.
But going back to that night, 96, the sun comes out, and what happens after that?
Well, they just crowned the champions on the trailer. I mean,
So they went in the pit area and
they
crowned
went in
them.
the area and said, "You're the champion," and that was it.
Wow.
And that was a real disappointing, really night for me because I was pretty much I'd done it.
You'd done all that homework and been ready.
Yeah.
And it was your time to shine, and then the rain came.
And I mentioned another disappointing time was in 1998. They did a night where they went back to what the prices of the first night, May 18th, 1949. That was a Wednesday, believe it or not.
Wow, yeah.
And they had Bill France. Well, he wasn't a junior, but they called him Junior.
Right.
They had the whole France family there, all the NASCAR officials there, and everybody got in for the same price it was in 1940, the first race in 1949.
How much was that? Do you remember?
I do not. But anyway,
it's less than it is now.
this is when R.J. Reynolds was still sponsoring the weekly tracks, like they sponsored
the Winston Racing Series,
and all the folks from Reynolds there. As far as the CEO was there, all the sports marketing folks were there. I mean, it was a big night. Well, about 6:45, the bottom dropped out.
Here comes the rain,
and that was it. And I was so pumped up to interview Bill France Jr.
I'll bet, yeah.
That didn't happen.
Right.
And the only time I got to meet him was in the buffet line. They had a bunch of food left over. And they said, go ahead and take some food home. And he was still eating, and I was behind him in the line. And that was the only time.
Wow.
And everybody was there. All the France clan was there. Everybody was there.
Now, I'm going to tell you the story about the worst thing I ever did behind the microphone at Bowman Gray.
Well, I got plenty of those.
And no, you can't beat this one, I promise you. And
I know. I know what you're going to say now.
You know where I'm going with this.
This edition of Rattling the Rollcage is brought to you by strutmasters.com. Suspension conversion kits assembled, sold, and serviced right here in North Carolina. When your suspension lets you down, we won't. Give Strutmasters a call at 866-597-2397. And by Vita C Shot. Get your daily dose of vitamin C 10 times over in one Vita C Shot at retailers near you, or you can order online at vitacshot.com. And by Rooster's Country Store in Kernersville. It's the Triad's most unusual home decor, yard art, and gift shop anywhere. And by H&A Directional Boring of Snow Camp, North Carolina. It's owned and operated by 2019 Ace Speedway Modified Champion Gary Causey. This program was filmed on location at Turn and Burn Raceway and Hobby Center in the Midway Town Center off U.S. Highway 52, exit 100. I'm Randy Pettitt, host of Rattling the Rollcage, and this is a production of the Monday Morning Racer. And may all your days be race days.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.